Hello everyone, thanks for joining me here on my channel where I'll be showing you how to make this crochet top. Now let me begin by saying that this is an intermediate pattern. I don't mean to put anyone off, especially the beginners out there. There are certain parts in this pattern that are slightly more difficult, so that's why I'd rather be honest and say that it's an intermediate pattern. But go ahead, watch the video and see. You can decide from the video whether you are able to understand the pattern or not. So with the construction of this top, we'll begin with these daisy blooms here. Now to make these, it's really easy. We'll join them and we'll work in the round. So we'll work from there and then we'll work our way in the round to the top. Now, if you look at this, we're working from the bottom to the underarm, and that's the length of the top. So the length, it's adjustable. I've worked mine to under the bust, and that makes it a crop top. You can decide on whether you want it cropped, or you can go further down to the waist, or even further to the upper hip. But I would not advise going further than that, because then you're looking at working increases and things like that, and that's another tutorial all on its own. So the length is adjustable to it cropped being under the bust, then to the waist or to the upper hip. You can decide on that. We'll work from the bottom up, and we're working in the round for this part of the top, from the bottom to the underarm. That will be worked in the round. Thereafter, we'll go ahead and work the front separately from the back. So it's this upper portion that we're working separately. It's the front and then it's the back. And at the same time, we'll shape the neckline and the shoulders here. So it is a rounded neckline here, and here's the shoulders. Now we'll work the sleeves separately, and then we'll join the sleeves onto our panels here. So to join the sleeves, this is what actually makes it an intermediate pattern. If you look at the pattern, there are no seams, there are no joins. It looks like it's just all worked in one. And that's because of the way that I went about joining it. So it's slightly more complicated. You'll have to see the video. I join it in such a way that you can't really see where the join is. It's just worked all in one. It looks like it's worked all in one, but it's really not. So that's a bit more difficult, challenging on this pattern. Other than that, it's not a really difficult pattern. It's just this part. And when I bring in the sleeves, as I'm joining the sleeves, I'll join it in right through, and then I'll continue up to join my shoulder on the side. And then I'll do the same on the other side as well. So I work according to body measurements, and that's my preferred method of working. This top can be made for sizes from extra small to 5XL. All those measurements are provided in the pattern, and you'll see them in inches and centimeters. And when I talk about my stitches as I go along, I'm using the US crochet terminology with my single crochet, double crochet, and half double crochets and things like that. So what you'll need for this pattern, you'll need yarn, and I'm using 2 different brands of yarn, and that's only because I had like 2 of these in my yarn stash, and I thought I'll get to use it up in this pattern. The brand is not really important. What's important is that you are using 100% cotton, and this is a 4-ply weight, so that's a category 2 or a sport weight. and I used around 300 grams to work this top in a size medium. Remember that the longer you go with your top, the more yarn you'd need, and that's just a guide. You'll decide if you're making it for bigger sizes, you'll need more than 300 grams, and if you're making it for smaller sizes, small or extra small, you could do with 250 and going down. Yeah, so it's the yarn that I used, and the recommended hook on the yarn label is this one's a 2.5 millimeter to a 3.5 millimeter, and on this one it's a 3.5 millimeter hook. So I kept to the recommended hook, which is a 3.5 millimeter hook for my daisy blooms. So it's for just these blooms here. And then I went on to change on my hook size to a 4 millimeter for the rest of this top. Okay, so you will also need stitch markers. Now, stitch markers are really important for this pattern. It's so easy to get lost with these chain 5s that we're working. So I just advise using stitch markers, especially when you get to the separation between the front and the back body, and you get to the shoulders and things like that. You'll also need a measuring tape. You'll need a pair of scissors and a yarn or a wool needle to help with your seaming. So yes, if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe. I share intermediate patterns and beginner friendly patterns. Yeah, so let's get on with this tutorial. Hope you enjoy. We'll begin with these daisy blooms. So at this point, I've made a few of them, and to be honest, I'm really not sure how many I would need. Remember, we're all making different sizes, so we'll all need different amounts of these daisy blooms. I've made a few. I'll keep it to that, and then as I get into the pattern, I'll go ahead and make more of them. So let me show you how to go about that. Form a slip knot using the 3.5 millimeter hook. Chain 8. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Into that first chain, slip stitch to join. We formed a little ring here. We'll work all our stitches into this ring for round 1. Round 1, chain 3. Chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. Into the ring, work a double crochet, so it's yarn over, insert your hook into that ring, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. So you have 2 double crochets. Then it's chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And into that ring, work 3 double crochets. That's 1, 2, 3. Then chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Into the ring, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. So you'll continue on with chain 6 and 3 double crochets until you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these chain 6 loops. I've continued on, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chain 6 loops, and here's my 6th one. So to end, it's double crochet once into that ring, and then into the 3rd chain from our chain 3 that we had started off with, slip stitch to join. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chain 6 loops, and in between you have 3 double crochets into the ring. Round 2, into that first chain 6 loop, single crochet. So it's insert your hook into that loop, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2 loops on the hook. Into that same loop, work a half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into that loop, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through all 3 loops on your hook. Into the same loop, work 7 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Into the same loop, work 1 half double crochet. Into the same loop, work 1 single crochet. So here you have, into the first loop, you have a single crochet, a half double crochet, 7 double crochets, a half double crochet, and a single crochet. And then you'll slip stitch into the middle of those 3 double crochets. So it's into that center stitch, slip stitch. So the pattern is, into each of these chain 6 loops, work 1 single crochet, 1 half double crochet, 7 double crochets, 1 half double crochet, 1 single crochet, and then into the center of those 3 double crochets, work a slip stitch. I've continued on, so here it is. To end, I slip stitched into the center of those 3 double crochets. You can then fasten off and cut off the excess yarn. Daisy blooms. We'll now go ahead and weave in these tail ends. So the end that I'm weaving in at this point is the one that's closest to this little ring that I'll weave in. All you want to do is to go back and forth into these stitches. To weave in the tail end that we had ended off with, I find that it's easier for me to weave this end into this ring here. So I'll get it weaved in here instead of weaving it in at the top edge of the bloom. So here goes, just get it into those stitches all the way down. Right at the bottom here, you can go ahead and weave it in back and forth into the stitches. There you have it. So you'll go ahead and make as many as need be for the size that you're working. Like I said, I just made a few, and as I work the pattern, and should I need more, I'll make more as I get into the pattern. Let's move on to part 2 of this pattern. So now we're working the body of this top. We're working it in the round and we're working it bottom up. That means we're working it from the waist or the upper hip to the underarm, and thereafter we'll split the body into two, the front and the back, and we'll work it to the shoulders. Now to join these daisy blooms, we'll start off with our first daisy bloom, and here on after for the pattern, we'll use the 4mm hook. So we're always joining our daisy blooms like so. It will be straight across here, and on the upper side there's 2 petals, and on the lower side there's 2 petals. So we're joining it straight. So we'll work with 1 daisy bloom at a time. Working with the first daisy bloom into the 4th double crochet from our set of 7 double crochets. So that would be right at the center of that petal. Attach yarn. Then it's chain 1 to secure. Then it's chain 1 to secure. Work 3 slip stitches into the next 3 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3. Now we at our half double crochet. Then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and into our half double crochet on the other side, single crochet. So we've hopped over from one petal to the next with this chain 5, and we've from a half double crochet on the one side to a half double crochet on the next side. Now here you don't really have to be so precise. If you find that, okay, I'm in a double crochet and I've worked 3 slip stitches and I'm in a double crochet, can I hop over? Yes, you can. It's not going to make such a big difference to the stitch pattern if you are off by just 1 stitch here, because it is rather difficult to recognize a half double crochet from your double crochets and so on. I'm just counting my stitches here. So I did this deliberately just to show you that here, this is definitely my single crochet and that's my half double crochet, but I worked my 3 slip stitches and here I am, and then I hopped over to the half double crochet on that side. So don't really be too worried about that. It's fine. It doesn't really affect the pattern, just as long as you're not working your chain 5 from the top of the petal or so on. I just work it I just work it into the half double crochet so that I have a pattern to follow. Then you work 8 slip stitches to the next half double crochet on the other side of that same petal. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here I am at the half double crochet on the opposite side of that petal. Now to hop over to my next petal, it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and single crochet into the half double crochet from the next petal. So you'll continue on with 8 slip stitches to the half double crochet on this side. Then it's a chain 5, hop over to the half double crochet on the other side by single crocheting into that stitch, 8 slip stitches, chain 5, single crochet into the half double crochet on the opposite side, and you'll continue on with your 8 slip stitches and so on. So here it is, then it's my 8 slip stitches, I've worked the chain 5, and here's the first petal that I had started off with. So from that chain 5, I'll single crochet into the half double crochet on that petal, and then slip stitch 3 times to get right at the start. So at this point, I'll bring in my next bloom. So here it is, and I'm going to join these 2 together. So right at the start, that chain 1 that we had worked, get into that, and at the same time get into the 4th double crochet from the set of 7 double crochets on the second bloom. So here it is, and then pull through all the loops on your hook. So here it is, and then you follow the pattern again just as you had done for this petal. It's 3 slip stitches to the half double crochet, then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hop over to the half double crochet on the next petal, single crochet, 8 slip stitches, Here I am at a half double crochet on the other side. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hop over to the half double crochet on the next petal, single crochet, and then you'll continue on with 8 slip stitches, chain 5, single crochet into the half double crochet on the other side, 8 slip stitches. Continue on until you get to where you've joined these 2 blooms. I've continued on, so here's my first daisy bloom and here's my second. I worked the second in exactly the same way as I had worked the first. Here's my chain 5s, joining these petals, and then in between it was my 8 slip stitches. At the end I chained 5, I joined here with a single crochet, and then it was 3 slip stitches to get back to that point where I joined both the daisy blooms. Now I can go ahead and fasten off. So I'll work 1 more slip stitch and then I'll fasten off. I prefer keeping my tail ends on the longer side. That's because when I do weave them in, I want to weave them back into the center here. To attach our third daisy bloom, so right here, remember I said that we're working in a straight line with our petals. We've got 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom. So this is the petal that we'll join to the next one. So into that 4th slip stitch from the petal, and on your next daisy bloom into the 4th stitch from that set of 7 double crochets. Bring in your yarn. So you've got 4 loops on the hook at the moment, and then you've brought in your yarn. So you pull it through all 4 loops, and then it's a chain 1 to secure. So now you've joined both these daisy blooms. And then working on my third daisy bloom, I'll just continue on with the pattern. It's 3 slip stitches to get to the half double crochet. Then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet into the half double crochet on the opposite side. Then again, you're working 8 slip stitches, chain 5, join to the half double crochet on the other side by single crocheting, and then it's 8, chain 5, 8 slip stitches, chain 5, and so on until you get to the end here where you fasten off as you had done on the side. So you continue on to add on your daisy blooms until you have a length. Just a little tip for you. So if you find that you're finding it difficult when you're working those slip stitches and you're not really sure whether you're getting it into your half double crochet, like let's say you work 3 slip stitches but you've worked it into a double crochet and not into the half double crochet, it's fine. You can work 1 more slip stitch and get it into the half double crochet. You'll know it's your half double crochet. You can count your stitches on the side, and the half double crochets are generally the 2nd stitch on either side of the petal. Remember, we worked a single crochet, a half double crochet, 7 double crochets, a half double crochet, and a single crochet. So the 2 at the end here, the second and the second last, those are your half double crochets. So you'll work your slip stitches to get into that half double crochet, and then you can work your chain 5 and then get into the second stitch here, which would be your half double crochet. Then it slip stitches to your next half double crochet, and so on. So that's just if you're finding it difficult to count your stitches and so on, or to make out your stitches. You don't really have to worry about working 8 slip stitches to be so precise, just as long as you're working from one half double crochet to the next half double crochet. So I just think maybe that makes it a bit easier, and like you don't have to really about worrying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, making certain that it's 8. Just get into that half double crochet on one side, chain 5, get into the next half double crochet on the next side, then it's your slip stitches to the next half double crochet. So yeah, that, I hope that makes it a little bit easier. So here I've continued on, and I've joined quite a few of these daisy blooms, as you see here. At some point you will have to stop and check up on the length of your daisy blooms. Now right at the end I can fasten off here. So I did go ahead and make a knot on these ends just to secure my blooms a little. So here it is, and this is my length. Now I'll take this length of daisy blooms and fold it in half. Like so. So here I'm looking for a measurement that measures my shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So I'm making a size medium. The shoulder to shoulder measurement for a size medium is 16 inches or 40,5 centimeters. And these measurements you'll find in the measurements given that was in the clip before. So here it's your shoulder to shoulder measurement for the size that you are working plus 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So here goes, and I'm looking for a measurement more or less to that measurement. So here it is. I'm slightly under that measurement, but that's fine. I will not go ahead and join in another daisy bloom. That will just increase up on that measurement. So you can be slightly under the measurement. Should you go further than that measurement, then you're looking for a loose fit on your top. So here I have my length of daisy blooms. I've worked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you will join as many as need be to get to your shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 4 inches, keeping in mind that you'll need to fold this entire length in half before measuring. Now that we have our length of daisy blooms, we'll move on to working the lower body. So we've got to join both ends, make certain that this isn't twisted, that it lies flat, and you're bringing it to the right sides facing up. Bring your blooms together, and then you're going to join into the center of that petal as we did when joining here. So you bring in your yarn, pull through, and then it's a chain 1 to secure. So here we have this sort of a ring that we've formed with our daisy blooms. Once you've joined there, you'll fasten off again. Then you can knot this end just to secure. We'll now work round one of the upper body. So into those sets of double crochets at the top, right at the center, attach yarn, chain 1, single crochet into that same stitch, then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet into the center of these sets of double crochets, right into the center there. So before we move on, if you look at our daisy blooms, here's the join on our daisy blooms. So these two chain spaces, we want to join them together. So it's the chain spaces that's above the join of the daisy blooms. So those are the two. Remember, it's quite confusing. You're not looking at the ones at the top. You're looking at the ones that are right next to each other. When joining, at all times, make certain that your daisy blooms are facing the right way around and one isn't on the wrong side and then you have one on the right side. So make certain that the orientation is correct. So here it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you go into the center of that chain 5 and get into the center of the chain 5 on the opposite side. Here I'm getting into the chains itself and not into the chain space. Then pull through, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. So you've joined those chain 5s. Then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and into our set of double crochets right here, into the center of those double crochets, single crochet. Then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet into the chain space, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet into the center of those sets of double crochets, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if you look at it again, once we get to the top, right at the top there, we know that we're going to join again. The next chain spaces we need to join, and then we're moving up again on that way. So right here we'll get there, get into the center of that chain on the one side and into the center of the chain on the other, then yarn over and pull through all those loops on your hook. Then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and into our set of 7 double crochets right in the center, single crochet, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet into the chain 5 space right at the top, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here we need to join again. We're joining our 5 chain 5 spaces right here. So get into the center chain from the one chain 5 space and the center chain from the next chain 5 space, yarn over and pull through all those loops on the hook. So the stitch pattern for round 1 is chain 5, single crochet into the center of those double crochets, chain 5, single crochet into the chain 5 space, chain 5, single crochet into the center of those double crochets, chain 5, and here we're going to join these 2 chain 5 spaces, and then we start again, chain 5, single crochet, chain 5, single crochet, chain 5, single crochet, chain 5, and then it's a join. So you continue on with this stitch pattern all the way to the back to your start, and that's when we'll join and we'll continue on with round 2. So like I said, after there it's chain 5, 1 2 3 4 5, then it's a single crochet, chain 5, single crochet, chain 5, single crochet, chain 5, and now it's a join. I've continued on, so here you see it. Here's the pattern. Basically it's just chain 5s and single crochets right through, and then we join here. And I chained my last chain 5 after I had joined from one daisy bloom to the next, and right at the top from where we had initially started off with, I will slip stitch to join. So that was round 1 of the pattern. Make certain that this ring of this daisy blooms that you have is not twisted in any way before joining. So you will have to make sure that they are all facing the right way. So here's the right side and that's the wrong side. You could use any side, whichever you prefer as your right or wrong side, but make sure that you have them all facing in the right direction. Like, okay, so yeah, so let's get on with round 2. And I think round 1 was the toughest because you've got to make sure that your orientation is correct of these daisy blooms. Now here you will slip stitch twice, so I'm slip stitching into the chains itself to get into the center of that first chain 5. So it's easy this round, it's just chain 1. Once you get into the center of that first chain 5, chain 1 and then single crochet into that same chain space, then it's chain 5 into the next chain 5 space, single crochet, now here you need to chain 5, 1 2 3 4 5. So this is our join on the daisy bloom. Let's just see it. That's our join, and we're working directly above that join. So you'll chain 5, single crochet into that chain 5 space, then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space that's on the next daisy bloom. So this is what you have. And then it's chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space. So all you're really doing is chaining 5 and single crocheting into your chain 5 spaces. So you continue on to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 2, so it was just the chain 5s, single crochets into the chain 5 spaces, and here I am with my last chain 5. So at that point where I had started off from, into that single crochet, slip stitch to join. Round 3, and this is basically the pattern for the rest of the top to a certain point. So again, here it's work 2 slip stitches to get into the next chain 5 space, then it's chain 1, single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, and you continue on with chain 5s, single crochets into the next chain 5 space. And when you get to the end of the round, it's a slip stitch into that single crochet that we had worked at the start. So you continue on with the pattern in this manner. I've continued on with the lower body portion of this top. So at this point, all I've done was repeat round 2 with my chain 5s and single crochets, and this is what it looks like. So it's more of a net effect here. Now I'm working a cropped top, so mine is from under the bust to, if this is under the bust, then it's to the underarm. So this is where I've stopped. We are now at the underarm here. So you will work as many rounds as need be, depending on the length that you want your top at. You can work it to the waist. You can work it to below the waist or to the upper hip, but I'd suggest not going further than that. That's like working increases to get it over the hip, because you know that the hip is a much bigger measurement. So that's like a tutorial all on its own. But decide on your length, and this is at the actual length of the top. So it's from your waist or under the bust to the underarm. So this is where I've stopped at the underarm. Now we'll be working the upper body. So that's from the underarm going to the shoulders and the neckline. So here I've slip stitched into that single crochet that I had started off with, and then at that point I'm going to fold my piece in half. So here's my start, it's right there. So here what we're doing here is we're working the same stitch pattern, but we're working it separately, one for the front and one for the back. So we'll go back and forth this way, and then we'll fasten off, and then we'll work the back, attaching yarn and going back and forth that way. So let's get on with that. So here we have our side that's at the underarm, and on this side we have the underarm. So I think the best thing to do is to place a stitch marker here. And you can do the same on the other side, placing a stitch marker on the side, just to serve as guides so that we don't lose these chain 5 spaces. They can be rather easy to lose. The reason that I folded my panel along that starting point is because that we'll just avoid cutting off our yarn and reattaching and stuff. So that's the reason that I did that. Now let's call this round 1 of the upper front body. So into that first chain 5 space, slip stitch twice. So that's once and twice, and then it's chain 1, single crochet into that chain 5 space, and here we are at the center of that chain 5. Then again it's chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space. So you'll continue on with your chain 5s and single crochets until you get to the stitch marker on the other side. So it's right here. I have worked my way to that chain 5 that I had marked off with my stitch marker on the opposite side. So that was round 1 of the upper front body, and I single crocheted into that chain 5 space. Then it's turn, slip stitch twice to get to the center of that chain 5 space. 1, 2, then it's a chain 1, a single crochet into that chain 5 space. Then again it's chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, and you'll continue on with the stitch pattern to this last chain 5 space on the opposite side, the one marked off with your stitch marker. Here I am at the end of round 2 for the front upper body. Now you'll find that your stitch marker is out of place at this point. You'll need to readjust it because remember we had worked from that chain and then we slip stitch twice to get into the next chain. So that becomes our start. So I just suggest moving your stitch marker all the time and placing it into your new start. Okay, so I actually needed to cut into this video because as I worked along, I realized that I did make a mistake. You'll see that I have sets of stitch markers here. So there's 2 on the side and there's 2 on the side. Now this is these are the stitch markers that we initially put up to mark off the sides, the underarm. Those stitch markers you will not remove. Do not remove them. Keep them there because when you start working your upper back panel, you will need to know where to start that panel from. So that just marks off your sides. Now, as you'll see from the next clip onwards, I'll work and I'll start moving stitch markers. So what I actually did was I took that stitch marker and moved it forward. But then I realized, no, I shouldn't have. So I went back and found my space and remarked it. But I don't want you to make the same mistake. So I thought I'll just cut into this video. Yeah, so when you are moving stitch markers, you'll see in the clip to follow, we'll move stitch markers. Use new stitch markers. Bring in 2 separate stitch markers. And those are the stitch markers that you'll move into your chain single crochets. You'll understand in the next clip. But these stitch markers, keep them there. Those are your guides of where we're going to start off our back panel. So here for round 3, it's turn. Okay, what I did was, obviously, to end the round, I single crocheted into, slip stitched into that single crochet that I had started off with. Then again, it's slip stitched twice. So that's once and twice, and then it's chain 1, single crochet. Now here you can place your stitch marker so that you always have this guide. So we're just repeating the same pattern, and then it's a chain 5, and then single crochet into the next chain space. So you'll continue on back and forth with this pattern. I've worked my way to the end of round 3. So again, make certain that you're always ending your rounds into the single crochet that you had started off with. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here it is. So right there, again, slip stitch to join. It can be quite confusing. The best is the stitch marker. Place that stitch marker into your starting point. So it will actually, your starting point will actually be your turn, and then slip stitch twice. So that's once and twice. Then it's your chain 1, single crochet into that chain space, and at this point place your stitch marker. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that when you know, when you get back there, this is where you'll end off with. So I've continued on. Here you see the upper front panel. So this is from my underarm going up to the shoulders and neckline. Now at this point, I do want to go and measure this portion. I'm looking for my armhole depth less 1 or 1.5 inches. So here you see mine is around 6 inches or 15 centimeters, and the armhole depth for a size medium is 7 inches or 17.5 centimeters. So you'll measure this portion. It's just this portion, your upper front portion, and get it to 1 inch or let's say 2.5 centimeters less than the armhole depth measurement for the size that you are working. Now you'll find those measurements in the clip to follow. So I've got that measurement and it's all fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark out my shoulder portion right here because I need to shape a neckline. Now to shape the neckline, you count the number of chain 5 spaces and you'll mark it off. Now here you gauge the type of neckline that you want. So whether it's smaller or wider, I'm going to go for a relatively smaller neckline, but let me show you how I'll go about doing that. So on this side, I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's take it at 6 and I'll move the stitch marker into that chain space. And on the other side, I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's move my stitch marker into that chain space. And then I'll look at this and see, is that a neckline that I'm looking for? Do I want to go slightly in? I think I'd like to go in one more with my stitch markers because I know that we're adding some depth to this neckline. So it will appear much larger than what you see here. Now I've got 2, 4, 5 chain spaces in between. As we're working on this side for our first shoulder and our second shoulder, our pattern does seem to come in slightly. So when we make that turn here, it will go slightly in as well, widening up on our neckline even more. So you can go about gauging how wide you'd like your neckline. It's all up to you, just by moving the stitch markers left or right, and make certain that your chain spaces for your shoulder portion is the same on either side. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so for shoulder 1, again, it's turn, slip stitch twice, that's once, twice, chain 1, single crochet into that chain space, place a stitch marker into that single crochet, and then again we're working chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, and you'll continue on to your first stitch marker, marking off the neckline. Here I am at that stitch marker marking off the neckline. So into that chain 5 space, I'll single crochet, and then for my second round, it's turn, slip stitch twice, that's once, twice, chain 1, single crochet into that space, then it's chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, and continue on to the end of the round. Now we're only working 2 rounds for our shoulder portions. Make certain that you're ending at the stitch marker. So it's a chain 5, and here you can single crochet into that stitch marker, and then you can fasten off. So here we have our shoulder 1. So it was just the 2 rounds that we had worked. Now on the other side for shoulder 2, this is front shoulder 2. You can go ahead and attach yarn. So at this point, I'm attaching it into that chain space. Bring in your yarn, bring it through that chain space. It's a chain 1 and single crochet into that same chain space. Then it's chain 5. You can mark off this single crochet as so that you know where to end your next round. It's just chain 5s and single crochets into the chain 5 spaces. Then it's turn. Once you get to that stitch marker, it's turn, slip stitch twice, chain 1, single crochet into that chain space. Then again, it's your chain 5s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and single crochet into the next chain space. Now make certain to end into that single crochet that you had started off your last round from. So here, and then you can single crochet and fasten off. So we've worked 2 rounds for shoulder 2. Here it is. And this would be our neckline. So now we've got our front complete. Let's work on the back. So on the next side, so again we're working just as we had done for this front portion. We're working from stitch marker to stitch marker for a few rounds, and then we'll work our shoulders just as we had done for the first side. So right here into that chain 5 from where we had marked off as our underarm, we'll attach yarn, bring in your yarn, then it's chain 1, single crochet into that same chain space. Now you can use this stitch marker to mark off your single crochet. Oops, I've got to do that again. It just is too wide. So it's my chain 1, and then here's my single crochet, and then you can mark off that single crochet. Then it's chain 5, and you'll continue on with chain 5, single crochet into the chain space until you get to your stitch marker on the other side, that chain space here. Here I am at my chain space on the other side. This is the underarm. So I've single crocheted into that chain space, then I'll turn, slip stitch twice, once, twice, chain 1, single crochet into that same chain space, and here I can move my stitch marker to that single crochet. Then it's chain 5, single crochet into the chain 5 space, and you'll continue on until you get to the other stitch marker where you will slip stitch into that single crochet that's marked off. So the pattern is the same. You'll go on to work the same measurement as you did for the first side. So it was your armhole depth less 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. So I've continued on. I've worked the upper panel for the back body. Now, if you like anything like me and you haven't counted the rounds that you worked on the other side, and now you're at a point where you need to make certain that this length is the same as that length, because by stretching it out, sometimes we may not get it at the right stretch. So taking that measurement for the second panel just won't cut it. Okay, so I didn't count my rounds, even though I let you know that please go ahead and count the rounds at that point when you were working your upper front panel. So what I'm going to do, it just isn't a train smash. We'll get it done. What I'm going to do is count the rounds that I've worked. So counting these little shapes here, that's going straight above. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So, okay, I've got 12 of those shapes here. Let me see if I've got the same amount on the other side. So from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Oh, okay, that worked out for me. At the end, it's got to be the same number of rounds worked on both sides before we work our shoulders. So if you see on this side, I counted it around the neckline portion. I didn't count it. I'll be 2 rounds over if I counted it on my shoulder side. Okay, so I've continued on with this upper back portion, and at this point it's the same as my upper front portion when it comes to the number of rounds that I've worked. So I'll go ahead and work my shoulders on the back panel, just as I had done for my front panel. So you can count the same number of chain spaces. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chain spaces that I counted for my front. So I'll do the same here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I'll mark it off. On the other side as well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'll mark it off. And it's important that the shoulder remains the same as your shoulder on the opposite side, because eventually we are going to attach our shoulders. Then we have our chain spaces at the top. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so I did mark off 7 actually. So let me move that. 1 more, and here 1 more. Make sure you get this right. Like I said, it has to, your chain spaces has to be the same on both shoulders, front and back. Okay, so that's right. Now continuing on, we're working our back shoulder, the first back shoulder. So it's turn, slip stitch twice to get into the center of that first chain 5 space, chain 1, single crochet into that space, and here you'll place a stitch marker, marking off that single crochet. Then again it's chain 5, single crochet, chain 5 and single crochets into the chain 5 spaces. So that's 5. Here I am at my stitch marker, marking off that first shoulder. So then it's it's turn, slip stitch twice to get into the center of that chain 5 space, chain 1, single crochet, and then it's chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, and you'll continue on to your stitch marker. To end, it's into that single crochet that we had started off at, single crochet, and fasten off. It's only 2 rounds for our shoulder. Now on the opposite side, right here into that chain space that's marked off with our stitch marker, bring in your yarn. Then it's chain 1, single crochet into that same space, mark it off with a stitch marker. Then it's chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet into the next chain space, continue on to your stitch marker. So I didn't really place a stitch marker here, or it must have fallen off. This pink one seems to be troubling. Okay, so at the end, chain 5 and slip stitch into that single crochet. Then we have our next round is turn, slip stitch twice to get into the center of that chain 5, chain 1, single crochet, chain 5, single crochet into the next chain 5 space, continue on to your stitch marker. So here it's into that single crochet, work a single crochet to complete your shoulder. Then it's fastened off. We've worked 2 rounds, so it's fastened off. So at this point we have our shoulders done. Here they are. We've got armhole spaces here. So now we've got our body complete, or well, not really complete, but we'll move on with it once we've done with our sleeves. So I've got, here's the front and the back, or it can be any which way because they are completely the same. Okay, so now for the sleeve, I've gone ahead and worked the sleeve. So the sleeve is exactly the same as we worked our body panel, where we had joined our daisy blooms and then we worked upwards. So here again, we're joining our daisy blooms just as we had done for the sleeve, for the body, and then we'll work upwards for the length of our sleeve. Now to join the daisy blooms, how many daisy blooms you would need? I'd say that the best thing to do is to, because I love working with body measurements, so you can go ahead and join a few daisy blooms and then take this daisy bloom and measure it against your upper arm. So right at the top, your upper arm, measure it to see that it fits around your upper arm. It can fit tightly, that's fine, but it must fit around your upper arm. So that's what I did, and this here, I know that this section here is going to fit around my upper arm. And it seems crazy because this portion actually sits at the wrist, but we need a guide to start off with. So you need to take this, you'll join a few and then measure it around your upper arm. And if the edges meet, then you know, okay, that's what your measurement will be for your sleeve. Then you go ahead and join your daisy bloom, just as we had done for our body panel, and you work the same rounds as you did until you get to the length of your sleeve. Now for the length of your sleeve, you will get it to the right at the shoulder. It must be, you actually fit on your sleeve and it must reach your shoulder. Then, or if you want a shorter sleeve, you can go shorter, bring up your sleeve higher up, and then the top edge must meet at your shoulder. because that's where you're going to join to your body panel right here. So just to give you an idea, like it's really difficult for me to do this because I'm not certain as to how wide or what's the diameter of your daisy bloom. But just to give you an example, mine is, let's say, 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters wide. So I use 3 of them for a size medium. I would say use 3 for a size extra small, small, medium, and then for a large to a 2XL you can use 4 of them, and then for the 3XL to a 5XL you can use 5 of them. That's just a rough idea. You'll see ultimately when you join your daisy blooms and hold it up to your arm, and if it goes around, then you know that that's how many you would use. So here I've worked my sleeve. Now I need to join this section to my body panel right here. And to join, I actually want to join it in such a way that it looks like it's just worked together, that it isn't seamed together. So I've got to join it right here at my chain 5 spaces in between. So it's in between all those chain 5 spaces. And if I do that, then it really doesn't look like it's seamed. It would look like it's just been worked all in one. Okay, so to do that, we need to firstly make certain that our chain 5 spaces are the same as those on the side, the opposite side on your body panel. So it's difficult to adjust your chain spaces here, so I'd rather adjust it on my body panel. So you can go ahead and count the number of chain spaces: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then you'll count your chain spaces on this side. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I've got to actually work 2 more chain spaces. So I'll attach my yarn again onto my shoulder, and I'll work 1 on this side and I'll work 1 on that side. And then we can go ahead and join our sleeve to our body panel. So when you fasten off on your sleeve, leave behind a longer length on your tail end, and that's going to help when it comes to seaming our sleeve to our body panel. So I thought of many ways of joining the sleeve, and I wanted it to look like it was just all worked in one. So I hope you understand that why we've got to go back and adjust on our shoulders. We must work our pattern to a point and then work our sleeve. If this can fit your upper arm right up to your shoulder, if this edge of your sleeve, then, and you know that you've worked those many chain 5 spaces, and if you can adjust your chain 5 spaces here to match those on your sleeve, then this portion of your armhole is definitely going to fit your arm. So that's the reason why I kept this adjustment for towards the end. So here okay, so to adjust my pattern, now I know that I've got to work 2 more rounds. So I'll work 1 round on each shoulder, 1 here, 1 there, 1 here, 1 there. And then if you've got to work 1 round, you can just work it on one of the shoulders here and 1 on that side. Or if you've got 3 rounds, then you'll work 2 on one shoulder and 1 on the other. 2 on one shoulder and then on the other. I just hope that makes sense. So I've worked 1 round here, 1 round there, so it's 2 rounds on the side, and then 1 round here and 1 round there. It's 2 rounds on the side. So to work those rounds, you need to attach your yarn again. So there's many stops and goes here, but we'll get this done. So you'll attach your yarn at that chain space. Okay, let me get this orientated right there. So you'll attach your yarn right here. Then it's a chain 1, single crochet into that chain space, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll continue on as with the pattern. To end, it's a single crochet, and then it's fastened off. So you'll work it, your adjustment on your shoulders, and then now we'll attach our sleeves. So here we are attaching our chain 5 spaces on either side. So let's get in our tail end. Like I said, it's got to be a long tail end on your sleeve, and then you'll bring in your yarn needle. Now here you weave in your yarn until you get to the center of that first chain space. Once you're at the center, then into your first chain space on the side, you can join here. And you can seam those chains once more just to tighten up on your seam or to strengthen that seam. So here it is, and then go ahead and weave your yarn needle into your chain space until you get to the center of your next space right here. Stretch out your piece as you're working. Now join that chain space to the one on the opposite side on your sleeve by going into the center of those chains. You can strengthen up on that seam by going into it once more. And then you can weave your needle through your chain to get to the center of your next chain space. So you'll see that we are working our sleeve from the shoulder here, and we're working it here going down the armhole and back to the shoulder on the opposite side. So if we look at our panels, that would be the front and the side would be the back. And then it's find your next chain space and get into the center of that. seam twice just to strengthen up on that. Weave in your yarn needle into this chain to get to the center of the next chain space. Stretch out as you're working. So you can see what's happening here. It's you don't really notice your join that much. Then into the center of my next chain space, bring that in and seam together. Strengthen up on that. Again, weave your yarn needle through your chain spaces just to get to the center of your next chain space. Find your next chain space on the opposite side, the center of that chain space, and attach here. Strengthen up on that. So you'll continue on in this manner all the way around your sleeve. So I've weaved around my sleeve, so here it is. Now I've got the shoulder portion to seam. So continuing on from here, this join at my sleeve, I'll just go ahead and weave it into that center. So this part is really confusing. It's just we've seamed all around the sleeve, and here, remember, we started off at our shoulder, the edge of our shoulder, and then we worked our way along, and then we got back to the edge of our shoulder. So now we've got to bring these two edges together along the shoulders. So doing the same thing from my sleeve, I got into my chain space here along my shoulder, and then on the opposite side, then that chain space, I'll bring it in and I'll join it. It is really confusing, so that's what makes this an intermediate pattern. But like, if you go ahead and follow the steps and you calculate your chain spaces to the same as I did, then you would have no problems. So then you'll weave it into your next chain space along the shoulder. And then on the opposite side, your chain space there, join. I just prefer seaming twice, just to give it that added strength. And then it's weave in your yarn needle into your next, to get to your next chain space. And as you're doing this, you've got to stretch it out. Then find your next chain space on the opposite side. Join. Weave it into your chain space to get to the next chain 5 space. So here you have it, it's all joined. You can cut off on the excess yarn. This is your sleeve. So if you found attaching the sleeve quite tricky, I will go ahead and attach my second sleeve with you on camera. I've worked my second sleeve. The length of my second sleeve is the same as that of my first. So with the second sleeve, I left behind a long tail end to help with the seaming, just as I had done for my first one. Now, let me orientate that. Now I'll go ahead and open up on my body panel. So here's my shoulder. This is the shoulder, and then here's the armhole space, and here's my second shoulder on that side. So this is what it looks like. Then I'll go in and bring in my sleeve. So right at that point, now I know I've already adjusted my shoulder here so that I have the same number of chain spaces running along this armhole as on my sleeve. So it's 12 here, and here it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. That's the first thing you would do. Again, make certain that your chain spaces are the same as on your sleeve. Now here, you can see that we've stopped at this edge here. So we need to get into the center of our chain space. To do that, weave in your yarn needle to the center of that chain space. Pull it through and always stretch out on your weaving. Now we take that from the center of one chain space to the center on the next chain space. So I'm starting off on the second chain space here. I'll come back to end on that one. So here on that center of that chain space, join. So you've joined the center from one chain space to the center on the other. And then you can secure there by going seaming once more. And then you'll weave in your yarn needle to get to your next chain space. Then on the opposite side, from your next chain space, attach your yarn. Just secure it. Again, weave in your to get to the next chain space. Stretch out your as you're working here at your next chain space. Join. And then you'll continue on weaving into your chain spaces. Joining. Securing that. Now we're joining along the shoulders. We're just continuing on. So get into that chain space on one side, join to the chain space on the next side. And fasten off. So here's the neckline. This is the neckline, and here's my sleeve. So that's a huge relief getting those joins done, but that was the most difficult part of this pattern. Now to finish off on our pattern, we can go ahead and weave in all these ends. So again, with your yarn needle, okay, well, you know how to weave in these ends. You'll take them, weave them through to that center, and that's where you'll weave in your ends here. But should you have any ends here, you need to take them back and forth into these chains to weave them in. Do this a few times just to secure the ends. You can also, if they're quite close to the neckline, you can get them into the neckline, into this edging around the neckline. Wherever you find looser ends, like here, you can see that it could open up. You can go ahead and knot up on those ends and then weave in those ends. So yeah, that's it for this tutorial. Happy weaving, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.